There are 5 major news items of the weekend for Tesla. First, Tesla dropped a new demo of the Tesla bot showing off 12 Gen 2s in the lab and announcing that 2 of the bots are now in the actual factory doing field testing. Second, it appears, although not confirmed officially by Tesla, Tom Zhu, Senior Vice President of Automotive, is returning to lead Tesla China and will no longer take on the role covering Europe and North America. Why is he doing this? This follows a rumor of yet another potential 10,000 employee layoff. Third, there are reports that Dojo is now in production and it's incredibly powerful. And fourth, there's rumors that there might actually be a Giga Argentina. Elon Musk is visiting Argentina today. We're going to find out why he's there. Finally, we'll also cover a new note dropped by Adam Jonas of Morgan Stanley. Adam is one of the few institutional analysts covering Tesla to actually try out full self-driving. I've got Jeff Lutz here with us, and he has some predictions that might be shocking, specifically about Argentina as well. You stick around for that. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeff.
Yeah, great to be with you, Herbert. Let's jump into it. A lot of news.
Lots of news. Let's get in there. So we've got this one starts off with it being very rumors. We don't know if it's confirmed, but we have been hearing people being laid off. It's another massive round of layoffs, potentially affecting another 10,000 employees. We don't know if that's true or not. Now, Tom Zhu has apparently returned to Tesla China, and this is his previous role, and resuming his role of in charge of the business of the Greater China region. This, he was initially promoted to lead global automotive, including Europe and North America. Now he's apparently going back to Tesla China. This is Tom Zhu, very, very well respected, incredibly doing a great job for Tesla. He's seen his sales skyrocket from 20,000 to 700,000 by 2023. He's the man that made it happen. And why are they doing this? So is it because they're doubling down on the Chinese market? It's definitely one of the most important, or is he being demoted? What is happening? There's only one reason, according to Christopher Dungeon, and he thinks it's Model Y refresh. It could also be the rollout of robotaxi and FSD. What's your thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, I have a interesting take. Some of it's aligned with this, which is Elon announced on the earnings call that Tesla is going to produce new lower cost vehicles and be able to pull this ahead of the launch of the compact vehicle or the next vehicle platform. And the shortest path to production is utilizing the kind of the design and supply chain that has the lowest network latency. Tesla has the lowest network latency in automotive. When I say network latency, it's from kind of raw material to final point of distribution and what that span of time is. And relative, you're talking about thousands of components, but kind of that span of time. Now, if you double click inside of Tesla's business, what has the fastest development time and even the shortest network latency inside of Tesla's business, and that would be their Shanghai facility. They're about 97% locally sourced. And the tool shops and the spins, and when you're trying to rapidly iterate to get a new product from inception to launch, you're going to do it faster in that environment. When you have your source of supply, you have your supply base all around your factory, very, very close proximity, and you kind of have the tooling capacity that's available in China. When I say tooling capacity, the ability to fabricate all the kind of the Tesla specific tooling needed to make a vehicle of a new form factor and all the components that go inside of it. So Shanghai is the fastest route for Tesla to spin up these new vehicles and get them into production, is what I believe. And when they get them in production in Shanghai, they can serve China and rest of Asia, and of course start to fill the parts of Europe, and then they'll basically export that design for Berlin and for the U.S. to make similar kind of to the Model 3 refresh, except that's not being made in Berlin. So that's what I see happening. I see the fastest path to production of these new interim vehicles coming out of Shanghai, and they need Tom there to kind of sit on top of this and bird dog it and get it into production more rapidly. And he's got a history and capability of doing that along with his team there. And the second thing is autonomy and getting FSD going and getting that ramp. So there's two distinct business company changing ramps that are going to be occurring out in Shanghai. 8.8, Year of the Dragon. I don't think that's I don't think it's a coincidence. I actually think there's big plans for China. So while he's returning to China, I think he's returning to much larger responsibility of ramping an autonomy business, robotaxi business, and ramping these new interim vehicles that Elon said, this is a priority we have to get done, and he's the leader to do it. So I actually think Elon has great faith in him. And so again, and the other thing is, like, everything's not all good, everything's not all bad. Like, I'm not one of those people that says, well, yeah, no matter what move Tesla makes, it's best. I'm not. There could be issues with what he's been working on currently, which is the marketing and global sales. Yeah, there may have been some issues, and Elon may be doing some reshuffling. There's no question about it. But I think he's returning to much greater responsibility in China. Is my point.
Yeah, love it. Totally agree with you. He just came off of talking to the premier, second man in charge of, government official in charge of China. They've given preliminary approval for FSD. So it sounds like that he solidified that relationship. Time to go full bore in China and then have Tom Zhu there. I like also the Model Y refresh. It's the most important product of Tesla. Then you've got your Model, the lower affordable cars. Then you got FSD. Makes sense? So let's go on to the next big, great news that happened this weekend. Tesla dropped a new video of Tesla Bot. This is, this bot is basically, it's actually this. Hold on. That's the slow down version of it. So you got able to do useful tasks. It's actually, the shocking info is that now the 2 Tesla bots are actually in the factory. This is still the lab, of course, what you're seeing here, but it's able to do pick and place of 4680 batteries in a very specific slot. That's the cool thing that it's able to do. They still need to work on speed and being able to transfer this knowledge from one bot to all the other bots, because there's bot-to-bot variants. And when you look at the actual lab itself, there looks like there's at least 12 bots there, and they're all Gen 2. So it's getting close to this. So Jeff, you have a different take on this. You were saying that you think that it's not just it's going to replace a ton of the traditional single-purpose bot arms that are far more expensive and less fungible. Tell me what you're thinking there.
Yeah, so I work with companies on their cost structure and manufacturing, really to design from the ground up. And really a lot of principles that are discussed here with Tesla as well, in terms of simplification and really looking at those capital and labor efficiencies. So in this situation, I think when we talk about Optimus, we talk a lot about labor and taking labor out of the factory and how many people versus how many bots. But I think the other thing that's a little bit that goes unnoticed are the thousands and thousands of these Fanuc and KUKA robot arms that are purchased by companies and trained on a singular task. Now, they could be retrained and they're somewhat fungible, but there's a lot of, there's a lot of engineering involved in doing that. And there's a lot of retrofitting involved to get it, bolted into one place for one, single purpose. So what's not discussed is, in this situation where they showed Optimus here sorting the batteries into the bin, you would have normally had a robot arm pick and placing from the line, putting it in, and then you'd be putting that bin on some sort of conveyance and moving it to the next stage. And by no means was that, that setup representative of what final production would look like. But for me, the light that went on is not only is there going to be a huge labor efficiency gain, but there's going to be a huge capital efficiency gain by swapping out those or not needing to, utilize those robot arms, which could be a couple $100,000 each. You have the hardware, you have the service to support them, you have the software, you have the installation cost, and then you've got to basically depreciate that over a number of years. And if you change your production mix and you need less of this and more of something else, those things are harder to move. And what those do is those turn into weights or anchors on your fixed cost structure in the factory and your capital efficiency. So now if you have this humanoid robot, which should get you quicker training times, and it would be more fungible. If that task were to basically be deprecated in some form or ramped down, you'd take that bot and move it and retrain it in another area. So I think we always talk about that in context with labor. We don't actually talk about it in terms of the fixed capital that's installed in factories. I think a lot of that is going to come down, and I think it's not being fed into many different calculations. I think it's going to be very meaningful.
I'd like you to explain to folks about the term design locked, because I know that you have explained and taught us many viewers of this channel whenever you're on. You explain how much longer it takes after design lock for the typical production line to happen and then scaling. So one of the things that we were surprised with them, what they dropped this weekend, was they're saying that now they have 2 Tesla bots actually in the factory, not yet doing useful work, not yet replacing any, actually being used by Tesla, like in production or anything like that, but they're there doing testing. And then they plan that by the end of this year, they'll actually be able to do useful work. And that means they're actually, hired by the factory. But then Elon said that they're working on the hands. Currently, there's 11 degrees of freedom, and he expects that the hands of the bots will have 22 degrees of freedom. That will happen by the end of this year. So what's your expectation of when the bot will be design locked, and what does that all mean?
Yeah. So at some point, a bill of material needs to be locked so that the suppliers that make that part have a recipe that they can replicate and get their cost structure down and get their velocity up so they can feed your factory. And while Tesla has been known to kind of have this dynamic approach where, they're kind of making updates every few weeks, you see them coming into the factory. That's not on all 10,000 parts that are in a car today, or several thousand parts that are in a vehicle today. It's on a select few where they're making these updates. So the point is when you're ramping a new product, you do need to select, call it recipe number 1, which is like, this is the bill of material that we're going to build the first 100,000 or million bots with some number with. And when you design lock, there's initial design lock, and then there's final design lock. Initial design lock is, this is form, fit, and function about what I want an end state for mass production. But between where I'm at today and getting into production, I know I'm going to have to engineer it a bit. I'm going to have to make some smaller cycle tweaks to it to get it to be, scalable at the right, profitably scalable. And I think that's the stage where Tesla's at on Optimus, which is, I think they're trying to get to this initial design lock phase, which is like, this is what I want. I want a bot with 22 degrees of freedom, in the hand. I want this change, that change. I want all that in. And then basically you'd have initial design lock. So what the supply base would do and what the Tesla factories would do is they would go off and they would put a tooling schedule to prototype that lock design. And that's usually done in a number of phases throughout the development process. And that, depending on the complexity of the product, that could take anywhere from 6 to 15 months or more to kind of work through those iterations of, I had my initial design lock, I tooled it up in a prototype manner, and now I'm building larger volumes of prototypes. This is where you'll see hundreds, maybe dozens and hundreds of bots potentially being made. And then they get to a place called final design lock, which is, it's this part revision, it's this design database, this 3D design database that I want the suppliers to scale and make many thousands or millions of. It doesn't mean that you can't go in and unlock that part later to cost reduce it or to eliminate it or whatever. But what it means is, like, this is the bill of material I need to go into production with. So in summary, I think what Tesla's trying to do here with Optimus is this hand change, which will come in at a later part of the year, that will start a clock of initial design lock. The supply base will be tooling that up, getting that in. Maybe that's what Elon means by the end of the year. Maybe they'll have many prototyped samples of this in for development work. And then you would start a clock of iteration between that point in time and mass production. And that's hard to assess from the outside, but that's how the development process works.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for explaining that. This is exciting. It's coming sooner. Okay, so another bit of news that happened today is Elon Musk is apparently meeting with President of Argentina, Javier Milei. Let's watch this. I think this, this was several,
A couple weeks ago. Yeah.
A couple weeks ago.
a happy pleasure for me. This is very
Wow, thank you.
All the you do for the world.
Well, it's an honor to meet you too. Welcome. Is this the sister of the president?
My sister, boss.
The boss. You want to take some photos? Okay.
Okay, Jeff. So this is interesting because, like you said, he just met him a couple of weeks ago. You posted this right away. You said, mark this post. This quick repeat meeting is indicative of deal development. Giga Argentina, you're calling it, eh? Is coming, in my humble opinion. There's deductive reasoning that supports at least the conversation. Don't at me. Go ahead, Jeff. You're making a big, bold comment here.
Yeah, two global leaders don't normally have a repeat meeting a few weeks apart if they're not discussing something material. And I don't know if it's full-on manufacturing, a giga site, or if it's a smaller, maybe it's a mega factory for mega packs. I don't know what it is exactly. None of us know, but here's some facts. So Argentina is a big country. It's almost, I think, 50 million people. And they do produce vehicles, and they have a pretty good export business. Hundreds of thousands, I think they do, over 300,000 a year they do for Brazil. And Brazil's a neighboring country, 220 million people. So you look at just Argentina and Brazil alone, you're talking, 260 to 270 million people. And, they have the ability, the means, the industrial base to do, production. I think they do a lot of diesel trucks and vehicles of that sort, but I think they do multiple vehicle types. And in general, it's an industrious country. And I could see, Miele wanting to bring, the leading edge in terms of manufacturing. And I think they're also kind of aligned ideologically on many topics too, about, waste and so forth. And I could see them working together. Again, why would they be meeting again, 3 weeks apart? And I don't know where this meeting is, by the way. I don't know if it's, here in the US or abroad, but they're meeting again. And just in my experience, you don't normally do that a couple weeks apart unless you're discussing something material. And I couple that, and I couple their vehicle production and export business. And really, Tesla doesn't have a position. They're exporting vehicles, I think, into Colombia and a couple other countries. But, Argentina's got really favorable export lanes to Brazil, Colombia, a lot of South America and Mexico. They even export, I think, some diesel trucks to the U.S. Not that Tesla would be doing production down there to export back here. But the point is they've got a good export business. They're industrious. And I don't think these two leaders will be meeting 3 weeks apart unless they're talking about potentially advancing some sort of relationship.
Giga Argentina, you heard it first here. We'll see if that happens. We'll come back to this video. Very interesting that he's meeting with them 2 weeks later. Like you said, great. Okay, next story, of course, is Adam Jonas of Morgan Stanley. Obviously a bull for Tesla, been following quite a bit. He actually drove full self-driving. I don't know, don't worry about this. This is about his comments about the vision and how it compares to insect eyes. But, you've got an institutional analyst that's actually now testing out full self-driving. It's kind of shocking that so few of them have actually even tested it. So this is his initial impressions. Cautious when it needs to be, assertive when it should be. Seems to demonstrate a heightened sensitivity to pedestrians, right? Or things associated with pedestrians, crosswalks. Smoother actuation. Overall noticeable improvement from prior tested version 12.3.4. So he's saying that he's tested it already. So according to Tesla, the FSD version I drove included relatively minor tweaks, and version 12.4 will show a big jump in capabilities with most training compute limitations have been eliminated. Let's talk about this first, and then we'll go in his conversations and his analysis of data being captured.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you want analysts who comment on a particular business, that you'd want them to experience it. You would want it to be more than one ride, by the way, too. And you kind of want them to own the product, to test it, to understand it, the best they can. He covers the entire auto industry, so it's not like he can have every car and know every experience. But if this is what you're paid to do, and you're paid to give information to clients, if I were him, I would want to sit and spend many hours in Tesla FSD, the Mercedes system, the Ford system, and and then the various regional robotaxi systems that are available, and to really understand that, because autonomy, this is the direction a lot of the industry is going, and this is where a new source of revenue is going to come from. So it seems like he's got a good handle on where we're at today. I'm driving that release as well. I think it's a meaningful set. It's certainly the best in the series on the 12 series so far. But I'm looking like him. I'm looking forward to 12.4, and I'm looking forward to where Tesla says, like, here's a release that we trained in kind of an unconstrained compute model perspective. I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to Tesla saying they're feature complete, which I don't know if they'll ever honestly say that, but because I think they'll be adding lots of smaller features along the way. But in terms of getting Smart Summon in and everything else, and I'm looking forward to Tesla saying that they've gotten to feature complete, because that's when you get the majority of the bug kind of drive down from that point. So yeah, I'm excited. I think other analysts should be doing this. By the way, I think this is one blind spot of some of the analysts, and just their ability to understand and model this capability and understand the difference and the nuance of what the other systems can and cannot do.
Exactly. They just don't get it. But what's really incredibly good about this note that Adam Jonas has dropped is his analysis of the data being captured. This is a lot more than I even thought it was based on what his research is. He goes, okay, we estimate Tesla has approximately 5.5 million cars on the road today, okay, reaching 25 million units by fiscal year 30, 50 million by 2035. That's fair. Tesla's vehicle fleet should be driving a collective 100 billion miles per year run rate by late 2025 in our forecast. What? Whoa, that's a big number. That's crazy. That's incredible that this is their research note. That's what they think. That's approximately 11.6 million miles per hour, over 3,200 miles per second. According to robotics machine learning community, when training robots, it's not just the amount of data that's required for training neural nets, but also the diversity of data. Okay? Video is extremely data rich, but quite low in information density, meaning out of all the information captured in high definition video from a camera, only very minute portion is actually useful information to the perception and navigation of the robot, which is the car. Collecting monumentally large data sets increases the ability for the fleet to capture the most relevant information, corner cases to improve the system. This is great. So first of all, he recognizes the tremendous amount of miles, and that he recognizes that the miles driven does matter. The video captured does matter. And that's how you get the corner cases. If you don't understand this and you don't believe this, that's when you believe that Waymo, Cruise, all these Chinese car companies, every other competitor will be able to just catch up shortly. If you can't say that you need this, 100 billion miles per year in order to capture the data edge cases. What's your thoughts on his analysis here?
We don't see a lot of the data out there. I think ARC publishes some pretty good data in this respect, but we actually don't see a lot of the competitive data. We just see like 10-second clips of them driving on the streets in San Francisco, and people don't realize behind a black curtain, every, I think, 3 to 5 miles or somewhere on that order of what the New York Times reported, there's somebody, with a joystick moving the car around, and who knows what's happening in China. So you've got to lift the cover. And what he's saying here is a couple of things. One is maybe they will start talking about reporting, total miles driven. Maybe that will happen, especially when others are, a little bit closer and starting to ramp up. But what he's making an important distinction is that data has a yield on it, meaning you can't use 100% of it isn't good. A certain percentage of it is good. So there's a yield. You get some of it that's good and some of it you throw out. And so the more miles and the more diversity of data that Tesla gets, the faster they are to, complete autonomy, and then they would have the best performance. So I think he's making a couple of points, but we're not even at the stage where they're even widely reporting miles driven, meaning the media and other analyst firms and countries, and really recognizing Tesla's advantage. But what he's saying is once you even get past that conversation, the total miles have a yield on it. and a useful yield. And Tesla will have, by virtue of the most miles, the most diversity of miles, of having all these out in all the various regions in the world, that they will also have, the highest yield, or the highest number of miles that can be yielded for useful data. So very exciting.
Okay. Very exciting. So not only are we expecting billions of miles of FSD video being captured, we also need to compute to be able to process this. And so now there's been rumor, I think it's actually a more well-established rumor, that that I've been hearing, that Tesla bought 100,000 H200s, which means that they're at 400 exaflops, and these are coming in a few weeks. So it's coming fast. But also that there's news now that Tesla's own Dojo processors in production, 25 chips combined into one. So there's a real good explanation of what's actually happening. This is one of a kind of processor that's really designed and just very, very powerful. 25 chips combined into one. So this is, I think tidbits came from last week's TSMC, which is a supplier of the chips to Tesla and many others, almost everyone, including NVIDIA, was an announcement that Tesla's Dojo system on a wafer processor for AI training is now in mass production. We are here, and is on track to be deployed shortly. So since the Tesla Dojo training tile essentially packs 25 of these ultra-high performance processors, it's exceptionally power hungry and requires a sophisticated cooling system. To feed the system on a wafer, Tesla uses a highly complex voltage regulating module that delivers 18,000 amps of power to compute the plane. The latter dissipates as much as 15,000 watts of heat and thus requires liquid cooling. This feels and hears and sounds like it's very powerful. They have not disclosed the performance of its Dojo system on a wafer. Considering all the challenges with its development, it seems poised now to be a very powerful solution for AI training. That's why it's been delayed. It's something that's never been built before. It's very powerful. It's very specific for AI training, specific, I think, even for video. But this is what it looks like. World's first system on a wafer production is now in production in next-gen data centers. This is the Dojo training tile photo that Tesla had released before. This is what it looks like. And then you said this, I don't know what this means. Whistling past the graveyard, not ideological media should be trying to second and triple source this news. I don't know what you mean there.
I'll tell you.
What are you saying, Joe?
What I'm saying, the term whistling past the graveyard is basically ignoring a kind of a major thing that could be happening, because you're more interested in, what group got a layoff notice last night, which is, again, very unfortunate. And again, we don't know what's true and what isn't. But this is, amazing. This is incredible news if true. And you would think if they weren't ideological focus, meaning EVs are bad, Elon is bad, and therefore I have to find bad news, and I have to essentially bury the lead if there's something that's tremendously good news. You would see fervent, trying to second, third sources. But I mean, TSMC came out in a conference and said it, so it's pretty good information. But you would, if you were trying to track this down, you try to understand a little bit more about production volumes and timing for this. Now, from being on the other side of the procurement of silicon and understanding of kind of what's going on or launching a major project, I will tell you this, what I think is happening. Tesla is not going to make a big announcement on this anytime soon. I think the trigger for them to make an announcement would be is when they've secured enough H200s to stabilize their and achieve their targets for compute power on the training side. Remember, Tesla was ahead of anybody in terms of doing their own perception chip for vehicles and for almost anything. And they were out ahead of that. They started that work, 2015, 2016. I think they were, in production 2019, maybe somewhere in that area, and receiving their own silicon. They're just, again, it's like NVIDIA makes perception chips. They go out, they're fabless, by the way. They don't have their own fabs. They go out to TSMC and fab them, and they send them to various customers, and they have their own software running on them to help customers, do their own solution. Tesla has all of that and they're doing all that work on the perception side. And now you see these training tiles on the training side. You see these tiles that are now potentially going into production. This was reported at a conference by TSMC. This isn't, a rumor or some, unnamed source. And again, so all those Dojo t-shirts of the expanded tiles, those weren't just t-shirts for people to be running around with. Like, Tesla's really serious about doing this. So they were ahead on perception, again, amongst their peers. Obviously, NVIDIA's, was doing it, but in terms of other makers of consumer products, they were ahead. And now it looks like they're going to be ahead on coming up with the training side to compete with NVIDIA. They're not going to do an announcement, though, until they secure enough supply from what they need from NVIDIA. They don't want that relationship to be stressed. There's no reason to stress that relationship. How could that relationship be stressed? They could be put in the back of queues on supply. They could be given, worse pricing. There's a number of ways that NVIDIA could stress that relationship, and there's no need to do it. So I don't think Tesla's going to make a big deal about it. In fact, that's, Elon may have kind of been out there in the media saying, oh, there's, less than 10% chance of this, or I didn't quote him verbatim, but, very low probability of this even working. Well, why are you in production fabbing, spending, billions of dollars fabbing up new silicon? If, anyway, so I think there's a reason, there's a method behind the madness.
Yeah, it's working. That's what it's in production. It's about to go, deployed soon. The question is whether or not they're going to sell it. And I don't think they will. I think they're going to just use everything that they build. The whole point.
They're going to consume it.
They're going to consume it themselves. I mean, they've just got so many businesses on their own that they need. The robot business by itself will need all of this. The autonomous robotaxis will need all of this, whatever they can create. Now, they might do Dojo as a service. I just don't think they're going to compete with NVIDIA selling these tiles and data centers. Now, they might actually create one of the next gen data center. That's why I keep putting this up, because there was a comment in one of the job postings that Tesla had, that they're looking for the one of a kind new data centers. And then here's TSMC calling it the next gen data centers. I think it's not just this Dojo, but it's also, powered with mega packs, and they'll be doing that for every country, as many countries as possible. So that I see that's how they'll sell it, not individually. Okay. We'll see. This is big news. Lots of 5 big news that we shared today. Thank you so much. Big pieces of news. Let's be proper grammar. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much, Jeff. Follow him on X, the Jeff Lutz. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Herbert. Thanks, everyone.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.